I'm Stefano Ronchi. I'm Rector's Delegate for International Affairs at Politecnico di Milano and one of the promoter of this INSYSTED project. Let me introduce you briefly the overall concept of the project before entering into the specific contents of the webinar we are having in this afternoon. We launched this project within an international network, strategic alliance, which is called Alliance for Tech. It is an alliance made of 4 major technical universities in Europe. Together with Politecnico di Milano and TU Berlin, we also have Centrale Supélec in France and UCL in the UK. And within this alliance, we applied for a project looking at the future of learning and education, which is called INSYSTED. Some of you might have participated in previous seminars we had last year. In the first part of the project, we started talking and investigating new ways of integrating physical education and online and digital education. And we came out with some deliverables supporting professors in designing their courses in a blended mode, using the best of breed we have in physical in-presence education and digital online tools, collaborative tools among students that are connected from different parts of the world. The second element of this project was to design and develop a new game in the area of operations, supply chain management, in the interaction of different departments and different companies in managing flows of information, goods, and financial flows, in order to integrate the physical and digital education with a game that would basically increase the commitment of students in a specific topic, in a specific course, which is the area we're speaking about tonight. The task leader of the serious game development is TU Berlin. So I'm very glad tonight to leave the stage to Thomas and Lissy to introduce you the game, how does it work, and what are the major features of using this game in this specific topic integrated with the blended mode education we talked about in the previous seminars. So thank you, Thomas and Lissy, for being here. The stage is yours.
Very much, Stefano. My name is Thomas Walling. I'm a professor of operations management at TU Berlin. As we drill down into the topic, and before I actually pass the word to Lissy to give you an introduction to the game, let me start with some comments on the very beginning and actually also the very end, which is where we are currently in the project and in the game development. So to start with, at TU Berlin, we are offering programs, integrated programs actually, in a variety of kinds. So we have industrial engineering, we have sustainable management, we have management of information system, business mathematics, and all these programs actually include one compulsory course, which is an introduction to operations management that we are offering. And as compared to other courses in the compulsory part, this is a course that has a strong focus on quantitative methods. You could also say math. And as you might imagine, this is not what everybody likes most. And in fact, what we learned from our evaluation is that 30% of the students either evaluate this course being difficult or even being very difficult. Now, the problem is we can't change the content as this is defined by the discipline. And therefore, we have started to reconsider the way how we teach this content, which is basically how we, still on the other slide, Lissy. And this is where we came across one of the paradigms of action-based learning, where we basically say hearing means forgetting, seeing means remembering, but doing, that is what enables you to really understand the matter. And that has motivated us to engage in the development of a game. So that was back in 2019. So it was before Corona, and then Corona came, and everything had to be brought to the digital world. So the good news for us in the project was that we have started to develop the game as an online game anyway. So the game was already there when everything moved to the online world. And the even better news for us is that it will still be there once we are moving to the post-Corona time. and are reconsidering the way we teach overall. So this is basically where we came from. And now to share some insights on the first evaluation of the game, let's look into some data. And here in particular, this was an initial situation in 2019, where in our classes, we typically had per semester 400 students taking the exam. In fact, to be honest, if I went to the classroom, and I really didn't count them, but my personal impression was that not everybody was showing up every single time. I would actually say that maybe around 100 of them were showing up at class. And also when we looked into the success of the class, it wasn't that great. In fact, only, let's say 20% roughly of the students got a B or better. And even more than that failed actually the class. So there was a lot of room to improve engagement and activity in the class. And the game was an idea to actually accomplish this. This was pre-Corona. Then Corona came, and back in last year actually, in the summer term, we had then the basic initial situation. However, we had online lectures, we had an online exam, and once again, we had 400 students in class. However, the activity level was significantly larger. So measured by the views of the videos that we provided, we've seen that there were far more views than actually students in class. So they were going back to the video several times. And also looking on the results, we saw that actually there was an increase in the group of students, even though it wasn't that great, of performing with B or better. And at the same time, however, we saw even more students failing, which, while there could be many possible explanations, the most convincing to us was this was due to a special regulation at TU Berlin, where students could take the exam over and over again without any problems. So this was also the first time when we introduced the game, and therefore we wanted to learn more about the effectivity of the game. And therefore we established basically a correlation between the activity in the game, measured in points that we assigned to the success of the groups, and the success in the exam. And this was quite convincing to us, because what you see here is, roughly speaking, that the students with 6 points, for instance, they got an average B in the exam, while the students that did not participate in the game, they on average actually failed the exam. So there was quite a positive contribution of the game that we could actually also see in the data. And in addition to that, we asked the students how they perceived the game. And this was also quite nice for us to see that in the evaluation, most of the students would actually say that the game actually contributed towards their understanding in class. Also, it increased their interest and curiosity, and they wanted to see more of that. And I think this is also a perfect point now for me to hand over to Lizzie to tell you more about the game actually and how we have been implementing it.
Thanks, Thomas. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the content of the game, but also some context. And then we will later on actually have a live demonstration, so you can see the teacher perspective, but then also what the game looks like for the students. But let's start with some context first. So Stefano actually already told you a little bit about the project context, but maybe let me visualize this a little bit more. So it's an Erasmus Plus project, and we have 4 partners. Stefano already told you about this. And what the aim of our work package was basically, and what the webinar today is about, is to develop the series game, and the main goal was to make this open source, so that it can be played by the Alliance for Tech Partners, which you see on the map, but that it also can be played by all other universities, and could also be expanded and changed and developed by other universities. So in addition to the game, and this was what the last webinars were about, the project also focused on the pedagogical side and how you can actually integrate these kind of games into your teaching, and how you can align the teaching goals, and also how you can integrate not only the serious game, but also integrate it with MOOCs and learning communities. But today's talk is basically mainly about the serious game, but every once in a while I will point you to some resources which were developed in the game in this context as well. Yeah, so there's a website, and on the website you find the really nice and well-designed pedagogical framework, which is a booklet designed by Polymie as well. So if you're interested in that, just have a look over there. So the game itself looks very simple, but you will see in the progress of this presentation that it is actually quite powerful. And as Thomas already explained, our main focus is this huge class of bachelor students from like 5 or 6 different study programs. So a very diverse set of students who didn't really encounter operations management before, but also are sometimes a little bit confused and want to or need some help sometimes to really understand how it all comes together. But as you will see, like this is our main focus, but we can expand also the game to use it in advanced classes. So the basic setup, the first setup of the game that we have, you see on the left-hand side. And basically, it's a very simple supply chain, just one factory, and you have a customer, and customer orders arrive at this very left of this production flow. So customer orders arrive over here, and then basically they are processed in the sales office, and you see what orders arrived, and then they arrive at this inventory matcher. And what happens there is basically that the order is matched with raw material from your warehouse in order to process this basically. And so the warehouse is illustrated above, and you see you store this raw material in the warehouse, and you need to make sure basically that every time, or the students need to make sure that they have enough raw material to process the orders, otherwise they will get stuck in the inventory matcher, and there's a queue basically. And so this is one of the first very important lectures of operations management at almost every university, is coming up with inventory policies on how you can actually order your raw material at your supplier, so that you don't run out of inventory. So we basically implement some kind of policy there that we see later on, and then the raw material gets delivered from our supplier. So once we have enough raw material in our warehouse, we can basically match our single order with the raw material needed to process the product, and then the product will continue to the workshop, and there's the actual production taking place. So this is one station, and the station can have multiple number of machines. And there basically the main production takes place, and afterwards the order or the product continues to the shipment and is then delivered to our customer. So you see the setup, the initial setup is very simple, which makes it easier for the students to understand, but also makes it possible to use all the formulas and very simple rules that we develop in this introductory class, and really have the students see what the results is and really let them apply also these rules. So as I already said, there are basically 3 main components of an operations management course, which we can introduce here already. So we have the inventory management. So the inventory management is basically managed at the warehouse, where we have the inventory policies, and we can determine whether the orders that a customer makes, if they are deterministic, then the formulas and the logic to use in the warehouse are a little bit simpler. But we can also have a customer which orders stochastic orders. So maybe the amount can be stochastic, but also the timing of the orders can be stochastic. So, and then the inventory management is also a little bit more complicated, but nothing that, so the beginnings of these rules you also learn in an introductory course already. So a second component then could be in the workshop. So as I already said, the workshop can have multiple machines. So this is a classic capacity management where you would maybe analyze the queues in your system, maybe already check out the inventory matcher, see that the raw material doesn't work. So you have to go back to inventory management. But if inventory management works fine and you don't have any queues in your inventory matcher, then you might still have a queue in front of your workshop because maybe you don't have enough machines. So your customer orders quite a lot, but you only have one machine, but you have enough raw material, then you would have a big queue in front of your workshop, basically. So the students would have to analyze what the orders are and or how many orders they receive and what the capacity of their workshop is, and then decide, looking at the time also, like the lifetime of the factory, if it's worth an investment in additional machines, basically. And then the last component we have here is called contract management. And there's actually two types of contracts we have. So there's one contract in the sales office, which is related to our customer. And this is the main one we talk about, but there's actually a second one that we have with the supplier as well. So there's basically two parts where there could be negotiation as well. So if you imagine a classroom where maybe some students would be the customers, but some students would be the suppliers. Also, some negotiation between different students group could take place here in a more advanced game setting. And so let's focus on the customer for a second. So you could maybe have a simple contract where it is also possible to produce a little bit slower, but then also choose like a premium contract, like Amazon Prime kind of way, or where you basically the customer pays a little bit extra to receive the product faster. But if you're too slow in your production, if the lead time is lower than the one asked by the customer, then you would maybe not receive money for this order. So this is then a little bit more tricky, and the students will have to decide, will maybe have to improve their factory, maybe buy some additional machines first, and then if their factory is fast enough, they can change the customer and or change the contract type to a faster one. And what we try to do is basically we would try to introduce the game to the students, let them experience the interface that we also will see in a second, and then have all the separate games, so the students can focus on separate areas of the supply chain and focus on separate problems. So first they will only focus on inventory management, and then later they will only focus on capacity management. So maybe all the other settings are fixed and there's no problem in the other sections, basically. And then after they learned about all the different sections, we can combine all the different elements and have, for example, a competition of student teams against each other, where they want to optimize and have the best factory, basically. So what does the interface actually look like? So we have two different views, which we will also experience later on today. And we have a trainer or teacher view, where the trainers, and this is the main focus group of today's session, will be able to design their own games. So this could be, the main focus right now is changing parameters, but this could also be changing the whole setup of the factory. We see that later on. So the trainer has the possibility to change all the different parameters, but they can also use some predefined templates, which maybe they stored from last term, or also another teacher from another university uploaded them. And then they can use these and can just run them right away, or they can adapt them to their course as well. So the framework itself contains basically only the game. There's no material, there's no, I don't know, chats or anything like this. So it's very simple, and we try to implement nothing that normally it would be implemented by an LMS. So at TU Berlin, for example, we use Moodle as our learning management system. And so all the material will be provided via Moodle, and also the team management. So assigning the students to different groups, which will be working together in teams to play the game, would also be happening in Moodle. And so Moodle has a very smart LTI connection, which is standard and which all other LMS systems have as well. And this LTI connection will help us to transfer the information. So especially what is the name of the student and which group belongs he or she to the game. And then the students will basically just have to simply press a button in Moodle, and then they will enter the game and the information is going to be processed. So the student interface is much simpler than the teacher interface, and we will see that later on, because the framework itself is pretty powerful. So there's a lot of functions which can be implemented, but which normally probably wouldn't be implemented in an introductory course. So for example, if you think of machine breakdowns, you can implement them in the framework, but if you don't need them, then you can always decide if the students should not see them. So then the interface for the students becomes just much more simple, and you don't have all the additional information that they don't need anyway. In addition, you can always choose, and this is basically here, these the sliders here. So you can always choose if the students see a certain parameter setting, and you can also choose if they can change a certain parameter setting. So in this case, you could, for example, fix that the students all have like 3 machines and they're not allowed to buy more machines, for example. So this also simplifies then the framework for the students, because it restricts the decisions. So then the setup, if you're done and you start a game, then basically the setup is transferred. The students can click their link, and the teams come from the Moodle side, and the students teams then play the game and they make their decisions, and this is transferred to the game engine, and obviously the game engine gives feedback, and the students will see how their factory evolves, and if they update the site, then they will see how their graphs, which they can pin, will change basically. But we will see this later on when we play the game. Yeah, so then the results for the groups can be transferred back to Moodle to use them in some kind of a quiz setting, for example. Okay, so as we have seen, basically we in our class we implemented these 3 learning sessions and then this integrated final one. And as we've seen, is that the actions the students can take, which we see on the far right, are basically split up first. So they always focus on one action space, and then later on the integrated solution. But obviously, there's no end to this. So you can always make it more complex if you introduce more stochasticity, or maybe introduce more uncertainty in a way, for example, that students don't see certain parameters, but they do have to analyze the game first. And just to bring an example, so if we have a certain level, so for example, the very first level, which is simple, where we only have a deterministic order the customer submits, then you can think that this is just one level focusing on the deterministic order, so implementing the EOQ formula, which you see on the right. But even this one level, you can increase the difficulty for students and make it eligible for advanced classes if you change certain things. So for example, here in this case, the basic setting could be that the students will get the information, so they already know how much the customer ordered, and it's deterministic, and they know that the replenishment time is 0. So if you expand that, then you could basically, for example, hide the demand rates. So they would have to analyze their office first, their sales office, to see what the demand rate actually is. And you might also hide some other factors which they will have to analyze to know. Then you can increase the replacement time. So this makes it also a little bit more complicated. So the students will have to order a little bit early so they don't run out of inventory. Or you could introduce, and this would be more for advanced classes, introduce some kind of fixed lot sizes within the production process, or also have some joint orders. So if you order more, you get some volume discount, basically. So even in this very simple first level, you could increase the difficulty by changing the setup a little bit. And this is basically possible for every level. So how does it work actually? So what happens is basically in our Moodle, the students sign up for groups, and then these groups click this link on Moodle, and then they will join the game. And they all play, all different student groups play the same game online over a specific time horizon. So you will see later the factory, for example, runs for 30 days, and you can decide how long these online 30 days should be in real life, depending on how you want to play the game. And in the end, when the factory, this is a specific technical product and it will not be sold after, I don't know, 3 years anymore, because then we will have a technical change. But basically at the end of the time horizon, we just compare the profit of the students. And there are all kinds of tricks. So for example, you can think of, and oftentimes only one team gets this, but for example, if you sell all your machines before your time runs out, then you can make some extra cash. So all these super tiny tips and tricks, some student groups always think about this. So in general, we have 2 game modes. So the default mode would be something like we have a lecture, and we have after the lecture, basically about a certain topic. So for example, inventory management, the lifetime of the factory starts, and then the students have 1 week with their teams to build a factory. And then maybe in the next lecture, there's some recap. So then basically the factory life would be 1 week, and all student teams start at the same time, and they will see, so there's a leaderboard, how they compare to the other teams. So if there's a tutorial in the middle of the week, then basically the students who are a little bit behind could get some help with playing the game, or also if the students are really good, they could also already play an advanced level, basically, which we've just seen. So then, for example, one hour in the real world would be 1 day in the game. So in this setup, all student teams would have to be registered, and only the teams who register for the game can actually play the game. And as we found out, this can be a little bit problematic because some people don't really manage to register in time, and if you have to wait for everyone, then this can delay the process quite a bit. So we came up with another game mode, which we call asynchronous game mode, and this is what we do today as well. Not because we don't trust you, but because this is probably the version that we will also use in class. For example, also if we have a lecture and the professor just wants to show something, so we want to just play a very short game, then basically everyone gets a link they can click, but we don't have to wait for everyone, because immediately after you click this link, your factory will start and the game will start, and all the students will be playing the same game, but they are not synchronized. So some students are maybe a little bit ahead and some are a little bit behind, and you will see that in the leaderboard, but everyone can play and everyone can also reset the game. So if you made a mistake, then you can just reset and change your policy and see if you improved. And so this gives us a possibility also to just play a game in a tutorial session, for example. Just for 1 hour, maybe have some introduction to the students, then play the game, and then have the leading team, for example, explain what their strategy was. And this is what we did in a competition mode as well, which was pretty fun, until the students realized that if they give some hints to the other students, that maybe in the next level they will be better. So they were hiding some information from the students, but overall they were pretty generous with their tips. So in addition to the game, there's a user manual, which we will provide you the link with as well. And so there's some additional videos that we have where we talk about the game from the teacher perspective, like we will do in a second, but also from the student perspective. And also there's an extended video on how you can actually design and manage your own games. So if you're interested, you can just go to our manual and check out these additional videos. And what is also there and which is pretty nice is there's a cheat sheet, so you can actually see all the different functions there are, and there's some small information explanations what these actually mean and what you can do. So we try to constantly update this, so this is on point. Okay, so as this was the introduction, basically, I just want to tell you what else we're going to do today. So as I said, it's going to be a little bit interactive as well. So we will post the registration link in the chat in a second. So that we would ask every one of you to register for the game, or register on the platform so you can play the game with us in a second. And then I will show you the teacher's view, and you will get your game link afterwards. And as I said, as you press the game link and you've registered before, then the game will immediately start for you. And so we will show you how you could play the game, and you can play along as well, and check out how you would perform, or what you could do. Afterwards, we have a very brief discussion, and then later on, we will give you some more information. So during this week, maybe you've already realized, so we have this webinar today, but we will also provide you with additional information. So there will be an advanced game that you can play during the week. And on Friday, we'll have another session, which is like the advanced session, where we will have a look at an advanced game and discuss a little bit on how we should expand the game to actually make it more appropriate even to the classes that you have. Okay, so but first of all, before we start on this, let me show you the teacher's perspective, so you actually know what I'm talking about. Okay, so if you click the registration link, you should land on this site. And so we will ask you for a username. So the username is basically your player name, and this is what your teammates, or in our case today, everyone will have a separate team. The team name will be later on as well. So think about that when you come up with the name. And yes, so I already registered, and then if I log on to the page, then I will land on this site. And this is some games that I already played, or maybe that I came up with and who are still in my storage because I want to play them next week. And what I want to show you is the teacher view, so not the playing view, but the design of a game. So I can click here and I see I have already designed some games that already started already, but also some games which I just designed. So they are only initialized, but they haven't started yet. And you see there are actually 0 teams on these games. So I can actually click the button new game and come up with a completely new game from scratch, or there's like some predefined functions there, but I can also use the templates as I showed you earlier. So I don't have any individual templates on my own, but I can use public templates as well. So I see that the designer Redouan already designed some templates here. And these are the 2 that this one we want to play in this webinar, and the next one you can play this week. So I also see that already 5 games were designed from this template. So maybe it's a really good template. So I want to check it out. So I can click, I can check out the template already and can see some things, but I already know that this is the one I like. So I can create a new game with this template. Okay. So now this shows up here. It's not very nice because all my games have the same name, but I know that it's this one due to the timestamp. So then I land on the main page, and all these windows, these are all explained in the cheat sheet. So I will not explain all of them today because there's also there's the cheat sheet, but then there's also some videos explaining all these games. But you will see that basically these ones are some more general settings of my game. So the speed of the game, for example, or the initial cache the students have. And the most important is probably the layout section here. So you see all the different elements that you have seen in the presentation already. We are also working on some more advanced functionalities, which are not bug-free yet, but in the future you might also be able to drag and drop some new customers, for example, so you can have different customers with different demands or maybe even different products. And also maybe later on have some different workshops here, so you can actually connect this workshop and have a sequential production line with different machines. So this is maybe going to come, but today we're going to just start with a very simple setting. So I can just erase these again. So and return to the initial mode. And I explained a little bit what these do earlier, but we can have a look at the functionality. So this is my customer, and you see I can change the timing of my orders, which can be distributions as well, and I can change the quantity of the orders or the boxes per order the customer orders here. Then over here, in the sales office, you can see I can come, so I have a default contract here, but I can also come up with new contracts and then save these new contracts. And the contracts are always defined by the lead time the customer asks, the maximum lead time he will endure, and basically the money he pays, and so on. So also this is explained in the cheat sheet in details. Then maybe have a look at the customer, at the supplier, and you see the supplier is very similar because this one, as I said, also has a contract type. So these settings are the same, basically my contract with my supplier. And then I can have a distribution or a constant delivery time. So the time that it takes for my supplier to deliver to my warehouse. Then here I can choose how much inventory I have to start with, and initialize the costs, for example, and here also the reorder point and the quantity that I order. And here I would probably also let the students edit this, because in the inventory policy, the students are supposed to change these answers, and some others I would maybe hide. And so like this, basically all the different settings, I can choose whether the students are shown this feature. So maybe FIFO is the standard. So I actually want to hide this for the students so they are not confused. But I can choose whether I want to do that or not. So the same here for the machine, I can also have setup times, and I can have machine breakdowns, which I probably will not have for the introductory course. So I can just hide this for the students, and then they will only see maybe the number of their machines and the money it costs for them to buy a machine or sell a machine. Yeah, and so for example, here I have some storage costs. So basically you can go through all the different elements and can change all the parameters that the students will be able to see and will be able to change, but then also change all the parameters basically of the game. So I don't want to really explain about this. I just want to show you what I've talked about earlier, so you have an impression. So for example, the video tutorials are in this really nice manual here, and the cheat sheet, and you will see all the different icons and functionalities I was talking about. And so if you're still confused about some of these, you can just have a look at the cheat sheet and can just read up on what this actually means. So for the students, because maybe you're wondering that you had to sign up for the game. So for the students, everything is much more simple, actually. So this is the course we played in September already. But basically for the students, they were part of the course and they signed up for a group. And then in the end, they basically only clicked this button here. So it's a plugin for Moodle or for another LMS. So they basically just click this button and then they already, they don't need to register, or they're automatically registered on the platform. So for the students, it's much more simple than it is for us today, since we're not all in the same Moodle course. A last impression before we start showing you the students' perspective. So basically, you will. So I showed you the back office, so the teacher's perspective, where all the different settings will be made, and you will see the student's perspective in a second, where a lot of the things are hidden. But in addition to the game, the students will always get an introductory to the platform, but then they will also get some additional information. And this is an example of information they would get. And you maybe have seen that in the Moodle course as well. So every time they have a link to click to play the game, but then a little bit in advance, so maybe 5 minutes in advance before the game opens, they will get already this information. So in this case, there's some kind of story where we sell vaccines and we are a company and we want to improve our production, and a lot of the parameters they can find in the game as well, so they can look for them, but oftentimes they are used to having these text tasks. So they basically get this text task and a lot of the parameters are hidden there already, but some are also only can be found in the game. So basically every game is connected to a task, and this task, for example, here, the simple task, and also the task for the advanced task you can play during the week, we uploaded on Zenodo, and you will get the links so you can actually check out what the according task is in combination with the game. So it's more the storyline around the game that we play today, basically. So maybe let's have a look, so so we know a little bit about the game before we play it. So in the meanwhile, you can start, can still register for the game if you got the link already. And so basically, we are consultants, and we have a production setting. We sell machines, and the factory runs for 30 days. And we see here we have a certain number of orders that we know we will see from our customer. We know something about our supplier, maybe some of the costs, some of the cost of storage as well, and the cost of new machines. And we know how our customer pays their money. So if we are slower than 3 days, the customer will not give us any money anymore. And we have some initial cash, and we have an initial machine. And basically for these 30 days, we need to optimize our machine now. So our factory now. So this is a very simple setting, which normally students would also be able to do on paper. But now they basically see how everything evolves in this active factory setting, basically. Maybe if somebody has a question already on the input, I would take this question. Otherwise, we would just jump into the game, the student perspective, and that maybe also clarifies quite a lot.
So I'm just going to share my screen, and before that, I will share the game link so you can all join and follow me throughout the game.
So maybe to explain a little bit beforehand, so you need to register for the game to play along. And if you haven't done so, this link will lead you to the registration page first. And then you need to register still. But then if you press the link again, then you will get to the game directly. As you've seen now, 10 people already managed.
So yeah, first of all, yeah, this is a game that is about chain or operations management. So we have a lot of objectives here, and as Lizzie mentioned earlier, it will always depend what the objective of the game is, and it could be a combination of different objectives. And the general approach as a student would be to firstly, I mean, we have already received the task description, but I will firstly want to go through all of my units. So I can see that my customer is making an order every 1440 minutes, which is exactly 24 hours, which means on a daily basis. And then I see that I have an average number of boxes ordered. And it is mentioned here that one or more parameters have been hidden by the game creator, which means that there might be a standard deviation here, but we will have to check that. So I'm going to keep that in mind, and I will check my office. And here I see that I have a lead time of 1 day and a maximum lead time of 3 days. So I would want to ideally process all of my orders in 1 day, but in the worst case scenario within 3 days, otherwise I will not be making any money. Then moving along to my inventory matcher, here I can see that I have a queue policy of first in, first out. And then moving along to my workshop, and here I can see the lot setup time, the item processing time, and the number of machines that I own, as well as how much it costs to buy or to retire a machine. And this could help me calculate whether I have enough machines to actually process the orders that are coming through the customer or not. Then moving along to my warehouse, I see that I have some inventory, some initial inventory there. And I can also see that I have a reorder point of 0. And once we reach that, we will make an order of 300 boxes. Now, I'm already, as a student of the production or the introductory course of production management, I'm already skeptical of this 0 here, but I will also check my supplier, and I see here that I have a delivery time of 3 days, and that I'm paying $100 each time the supplier delivers an order to my warehouse. Now, clicking on update, I will already see that it's day 13. And since this is a simulation about real life, then time is of essence. And I do not want to start at day 13 since I had to explain all of this. So I'm going to restart the game to start fresh. And yeah, so first of all, I will want to make sure that I have enough machines and enough inventory. And I know that I have some initial inventory, but I'm not really sure if my one machine is enough or not. And I could make a rough calculation, but it will always be just a rough calculation because I don't know if I have a standard deviation here or not. So what I'm first going to check is I'm going to check my workshop. And this is a plot that will be useful for me. So I'm just actually going to plot it. And I see here that I already, as I expected, have a queue building up in front of my workshop. So I go back here. I'm going to pin this plot again. And as I said, since I have a queue of items waiting to be processed, I will already buy myself another machine. Unfortunately, we haven't tested this with as many users as there are right now because we couldn't. I'm going to improvise and actually just start a new game, which I will join on my own.
Okay, so as we see, this is still a prototype. So sometimes we run into problems which we were fixing fast, but sometimes it's a little bit new environment. So as Thomas explained, we did play the game with about 120 students in September. So it's possible that a lot of students can actually play the game at the same time. And yeah, but we're constantly improving. So sometimes a quite stable version is a little bit delayed because we changed or we improved some other parts of the game, basically.
You see, in the meanwhile, we have a question on the chat.
Right.
And the question is the inventory policy based on service levels or on penalty cost?
This is quite a standard implementation that we implemented here, right? So the evaluation of the policy. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so so this is based on the penalty contract, the contract the customers have, right? So as you've seen, as you've not seen, but if you go to the shipping unit, then you basically see how your cash value evolves. And so this depends on all different kind of costs components, which are the costs you face connected to the supplier. So the fixed cost for shipping, for example, that Radwan just showed. But your main income comes from your customer, and depending on what the lead time was, so the time difference between the order submitted and the customer received their product, this will generate your income. So in a sense, it's both, because if you're too slow, then you don't receive any revenue from your customer, and if you're fast enough, so in our game, faster than 1 day, and then you will receive the full amount, and between 1 and 3 days in our case, the price the customer pays decreases linearly, basically. Yeah, so the formulas the students use to implement the inventory policy are quite standard. So in the game that we play, where there's actually no uncertainty, this is deterministic, right? So it's a trade-off, yes, between storing in your warehouse, the cost of storing in your warehouse, and the cost of ordering. So the shipment costs that you observe that you face with your supplier, basically. So this is a trade-off, and if some uncertainty is involved, you change your reorder point accordingly. So you order a little bit earlier to be sure that your warehouse fulfills a certain service level. So when uncertainty is involved, then the service levels are incorporated as well. So it's called EOQ, formula for deterministic case, and SQ for the stochastic case. And there's some other order policies as well, which we are thinking of implementing. Okay, so how does it look, Radwan? I think what we're trying to do is just running the game locally and to give you an impression on how it should look like.
So yeah, out of improvisation and due to unexpected happenings, this is now run on my local host. So I'm running this locally, so we don't run into overload issues. As Dizzy mentioned, we have tried the game before, but we obviously had to work on a lot of new features, such as the asynchronous feature, and for that we haven't tested the load yet, and yeah, it seems to be backfiring. Yeah, but for now we will get back to what I was saying, and to recapitulate what we were saying. We had our workshop plot pinned, and we took a look at all of our units, and yeah, and we saw that we had a queue building up in front of our machines of items waiting to be processed, and therefore we thought it was a good idea to actually buy one more machine. And I will want to keep this plotted, keep this plot pinned, so that I know if my machine is actually helping me. And I can already see that the queue is starting to be built down. So that means that my my policy is probably, or the number of machines that I have is probably enough for now. And I even see that on both day 6 and 7, on day 7, my machines were ready on 100% time. And I do not think that one machine could have saved all of, could have solved the entire problem, and that I'm not and now are not working anymore. So I suspect that there is a problem at the inventory matcher, or that I don't have enough raw material for my machines to actually be working. And when I check my inventory matcher and I see the plot here, items waiting for raw material, I see already that there is a queue building up here now. So for that, going back to my reorder point, which I thought from the beginning looked a bit wrong, as 0 as a reorder point doesn't tolerate any missing inventory. And using the formula, so I'm going back and checking my supplier, which has a delivery time of 3 days, and my customer who is ordering 190 on average per day, and then checking my sales office, where I see that every day we're actually exactly ordering 190, which means that probably the hidden standard deviation was just a trick or a mind game by the game creator to just make us think about that. But now that makes my calculations for the reorder point quite easy. So I'm going to multiply the 190 per day times the supplier, the delivery time of the supplier, and I will be at 570. As for the number of the optimal number of boxes to reorder, I have made a rough calculation of that, and it ends up somewhere around 88. Now the formula for this is a bit complicated, so I'm not going to go, or I cannot just calculate it from on top of my mind. And yeah, I will be clicking on update. And what I always want to keep an eye on is how the progress of my capital or my cash value is developing. So I already see that it's somewhat stagnant here. I will want to as well to take a look at my inventory matcher, and I see that I still am running through issues. I want to check. Yes. So yeah, looking at my warehouse, I see that my available stock went up substantially, and what my available stock represents is my on-hand inventory, things that I have on hand, which is represented by this turquoise color here. So I actually have nothing on hand, but my available stock includes ongoing orders, and it takes into account my order backlog. So at the end of the simulation, or it will already take care of all these orders that has arrived for which I haven't had enough inventory, to process. So that takes care of them. That takes care of all these like old orders. But at the same time, I see that my my cash flow is still going down, which means I'm probably not receiving any money for all the orders that I'm processing, and I can check that here, and I can see that I'm already not receiving full cash here, and that is probably because of all these orders that we were not working on while my machines were just ready and actually not working. And now we can see, as we said here, that our machines now are receiving enough inventory because we have fixed our inventory policy, and now my machines are actually working throughout the entire time, and still my queue is going down step by step, which means that I should be within a few days close to 0 queue, which is the case. Now I will take another look at the cash flow, and I see that now my system is my cash flow is substantially better, and I'm actually making more and more money as I go by the day. One thing I would want to look at is to optimize my contract with my customer, because at this point I assume to go and look back at my closed orders, I'm assuming that it's taking me now exactly 1 day to deliver all my orders back. So it's arriving at day 21 and also finished at day 21, which means if there was a possibility to make another contract here that is more strict in terms of the maximum lead time, I could change to that, but that is not the case, as this game, as designed by the game owner, is not about contract management. And now it seems like my my system is actually perfect, is working perfectly. My machines are busy 98.95% of the time, so I'm not wasting any resources here. And looking at my warehouse, I'm having a minimum amount of on-hand inventory for which I will have to pay storage. At this point, all I have to do is just watch as my profits increase more and more. And yeah, at this point, I will go back to Lissy. And yeah, this was just how the experience of a student could be in terms of going through the simulation and analyzing step by step what could be wrong with the system and trying to fix it so that it all falls into place. Thank you.
So if you want to try out the game, so for me it is still working. So maybe if you want to have a look and see what some functionality is, because it was too fast at some point, you can just click the link and also restart your game and check out some other policies, and later on we will try to figure out what went wrong beforehand. But for just like the sake of testing the game, it works still. So the question would be if there are any questions that you have now that you have seen the student view and the teacher view of the game. Okay, we would jump into the discussion that we prepared. We prepared some initial polls for you. So to start off the discussion, we still have a couple of minutes, so let's do that. So we prepared 2 initial poll questions, and which are interesting for us. So I will just launch the first one and ask you to submit your answers. It's actually very, very simple. So the question is, if you at your universities use an LMS, so a learning management system, to support your teaching or virtual learning environment as well. So how many of you have, or at university or at work, wherever you would like to implement these kind of games, how many of you do actually have the support of a learning management system, which would help you to provide the material basically and organize the students, put them in teams and support you with that? Okay, so let's have a look at the results. So, and this is close to what we expected. So a lot of people, almost, so 86% have an LMS. So that's what we're expecting as well, that people can use an LMS to support these kinds of games, and that it's important to have a connection or connector plug-in for these LMS systems. But there's actually 14% who don't have an LMS. So this is actually also quite a lot, I think. So since I already said, we are preparing for that. So you can use a plugin to connect to the game. So it's very simple. The students only have to press one button basically then. But later on, we will ask you what LMS you use. So because this is interesting for us, which LMS are mostly used, so we can increase compatibility as well. But before we do that, let me start a second poll that we have, which we are interested in, is this one. So the question is, if in your teaching you have previously used a simulation game or a serious game. So it's more about like these simulation games, I guess, these online simulation games. or simulation games in general as well. So we see what your level of experience is with these. Yeah, so already 25 responses, maybe a couple of more. Okay, so one last chance. So this is also really interesting. So the 61% of you have used the simulation game before in your teaching. So it's almost 2/3. So, but one third or 39%, a little bit more than 1/3 actually have never used these simulation games before. So it's probably also like some areas of teaching it's more appropriate than some other areas. But this is a nice startup. So a little bit more than 60% have used simulation games before, and others might have experience in some similar teaching techniques. So this starts off the discussion that we prepared, and for that I will stop sharing, and we prepared a Miro board, which you have already seen in the last webinars maybe. So I can also share that with you guys. So then we will jump from here to the Miro board, and I will also maybe share my screen so that we have one unique view here. Okay, so as I already said, there's a couple of additional, so maybe let's talk about the structure first. So we have the discussion session at the top, and then we have the additional information section at the bottom, where you will find some of the information we provided earlier already, so you can have the links for later on. So share the link to the Miro board. You will also get this in another email later on, but if you share it, you have it right away. And there you will find the basic game that we played today, the link that we provided, and also the task, but also the link to the advanced game, which you can play on your own or with your team during the week, and check this out and give us some feedback on that. Also the link to the manual with the cheat sheet, and the link to the session on Friday, which will be from 1 to 2, which is about this advanced session, but also really talking about what functionalities in detail for OM geeks basically would be needed to use these games in teaching. So, and some people already started filling in these. This is perfect. So as you already see, the first column is about which learning management system you use at your university. So you've seen ours is Moodle, and some others probably have Moodle as well, but there might be all different kinds of systems here. So if you use an LMS, which most people do, as we found out, just add your LMS over here. So if there are not enough post-its, you can also create some new ones on the sides, or if you don't like the color, you can also do that. So maybe one more point I wanted to add. So very important, the Friday session. We hope a lot of you guys will join us there to get some feedback on the functionalities of the game. But there's also during the week, you can play the advanced game, but you can also get some assistance with the digital implementation, with the didactical implementation, not the digital one, in your teaching. During this week, if you just write an email to Ada, you can make an appointment, and they will have a look how you could use the didactical framework to improve implementing these games in your teaching. And if you want to create your own games and need some help doing that, or run into some errors, then you can also write me an email here. Okay, so yeah, so the other points here you see, maybe I clean this up here a little bit. Yes, perfect. Are 3 columns that we see here, which are for the guys who already have some experience, or maybe have some suggestions or ideas, or also what the advantages are about introducing serious or simulation games into teaching. but maybe also what the criticalities are. So what do you really have to be careful about that it doesn't go wrong? Today we've seen that maybe we should practice on larger groups as well, on more diverse groups, to be sure that the technical issues are resolved. And what are potential pitfalls? So basically the criticalities are how you could solve the potential pitfalls. That's the idea. So I give you a little bit time to write your post-its and put them there. Maybe zoom in a little bit on the discussion. Yeah, you can also increase the size of your post-its, then they are a little bit easier to read. Also help you with that a little bit. Okay, there's still a lot happening, so let's wait a little bit more. Okay, so I think the advantage column maybe is pretty advanced already, so we can have a look. So I think a lot of the feedback is actually very much in line to what we received as feedback from our students as well. So Thomas already presented the results, and you see that is like activation of the student, engagement of the students. The students might think it's fun. So this is all in this section. Also that it's interactive, this might go in this section as well. But then the second section is maybe that it supports learning. So you have active learning here, and the students will make their own experiences, making decisions, maybe realize or really feel the consequences of their actions. And the feedback that we get is that the theory can be a little bit dry, but if they really like feel and see what the consequences are, then it's easier for them to understand what's actually going on, and they will also understand the theory better afterwards. Yes, so this is I think this is probably the two sections here that we see, like this engaging and fun part, but then also that it's good for learning because it's based on experience. So maybe then we can have a look at the potential pitfalls as the opponent side. It is no fun in the end. Yeah, so time, it can be like, especially what we also always realize in the big lectures is really hard to include it. So yeah, so this can be complicated. So in the end, also for students, like if they're not in the flow, if it's too complicated, but also maybe if it's too boring, it can be frustrating. Yeah, and as we see here, the students exploiting the game, this is tricky. Like coming up with these games is actually really hard. To like eliminate all the exploitation possibilities. Students can get very creative. We have seen some very creative solutions that I would have never imagined are possible, how to game the system, basically. Yeah, so relevance for grading is also a very interesting point that we discussed about in the project really a lot. What we did in the end is that they actually don't get just points for being the best team, but they get maybe some prizes for doing that, but they gain bonus points based on a quiz that they were filling out. So they proved their knowledge afterwards, and we hope that then their knowledge, they expanded their knowledge, and then they were just answering this very simple quiz, like simple if you played the game. And this is how they worked for bonus points for the exam. This is how we solved this. Yeah, so language is also something we talked about in the project, since our students are also German, so they were asking also for translations for some of the parameters. And I think it will be possible to offer some translation for some of the functions. And it would be nice to have the game in different languages, but this is probably will probably not be achieved in this project. Even though it's something, if someone really likes the game and wants to translate it into their language, then this is obviously something people could do because it's an open source game. So this could totally be possible. So let's have a look at the answers. Yeah, so the maybe like this with the stylized formulas, this is also something we discussed about a lot in our team. That if you expand the game a lot and the supply chain will get very complex, then students can actually not apply the formulas they learned in school anymore. And what we wanted to achieve always is that they learn basically that what they learned in class is something valuable which they can use as well. So that's why also the game is so simple in its setup, so that the students will have this effect. And this is something you lose if the supply chain is more realistic, maybe. But we wanted to have this effect first, and maybe only in the learning phase with the separate sections, but then later on with a more complex setup, it will also be okay if that's not the case anymore, but the students will have to improvise a little bit. So I don't really know what it is no fun in the end means, but maybe Thomas, you have something else you want to add?
I just wanted to thank everybody for the valuable contributions.
Yes.
I think it really helps to get some feedback on the game. And as you've seen, there are still some technical issues. It's a research project, it's still going on, and we are working on resolving all those issues to provide a really stable version very soon. So yeah, I think this is a good time to talk about the rest of the week, the chance to test out the game and to get involved in giving us some more detailed feedback also on Friday. Lizzie, maybe you want to comment on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as I already said, and you, and I think a lot of you got a schedule as well, containing all the different elements that will happen during the week. But there are two components which we offer you during this week. Is basically, the first one is over here to play the advanced game level. And so we provide, the link is still working. It's an asynchronous link, so you can play the simple game all the time, and the task is uploaded on Zenodo as well. but we also prepared in more advanced game levels, so for you to experiment or experience how a more advanced game would look like, a little bit more challenging, probably also for the experts in the group. So we provided you with the link on the button here in the additional information. So you can play this during the week and see how it feels. And maybe if you realize, I mean, you can also design your own games, so you can check out what functionality is there and what functionality that you teach is maybe missing. So this would be super interesting for us. And we offer, as I said, didactical help or also help in designing your game during the week. So if you write us an email, this is possible. But the most important thing is that we hopefully will meet again on Friday. And this is especially for the experts and the ones who really like the game and want to experience this a little bit more. And the project is still going on for half a year, and we're a pretty well-run team by now. So we're looking, I mean, we obviously have 1,000 ideas and we have limited time. But to prioritize what we're going to introduce in the game and how we're going to expand it, it would be interesting to talk to the community and find out what they think would be important, because we cannot implement everything. And if there are some people who already know that they would be interested to play the game in their class, or maybe also join us in some online competition and compete against our students, that would be super exciting. And if somebody wants to engage, we would be really happy, and then also maybe adjust the game a little bit in their direction.
Great, and please, if you have a specific lecture in mind where you're thinking about redesigning it to make it compatible with the post-COVID world, and you do need some support on the technical side, please don't hesitate to contact Ada. Maybe you can meet with throughout the week, and she will be able to basically give you some more insights based on the booklet that we have developed and some exemplary concepts where the game could be used. And also, Lizzie, if you have some further questions on the game and the specific application of the game in your context, let's just keep in touch, and let's try to make this really enjoyable learning experience for as many students as possible. All right, for today, Stefan, now it's time for us to hand back to you.
I was saying that it's quite normal to have technical problems when dealing with research projects, so it's something quite normal. I'm sure that we will fix everything for the next webinar, and I hope many people will try to experiment the game to fix other bugs, basically, and to start playing it also with other students in other courses. Thanks a lot, and get in touch soon.
All right, goodbye. So thanks for joining.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.